Okay.
Great. Thank you for joining us this evening, Rafal.
Well, thank you. I'm so honored that the film is being screened.
Yes, I understand that there was a rather long gestation period for this film.
Yes, well, like all independent films, it's always a struggle to get them made. By the way, I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to participate in this, and I'm so, excited because, for an independent film to be screened, and I believe you are screening it on the big screen. Is that correct? Or is this just
reasonably big?
Right, wonderful. So it's actually a live screening, which is so rare these days. I actually have not even seen the film myself on the large screen. I wish I was there. I've only I've only seen it, at various virtual presentations, but I never had the chance to see it on the big screen. So I'm so jealous that everyone in the audience was actually able to see it on the screen.
Yeah, no, go ahead, please.
Yes. So the process of making this film took many, many years. It was originally came to me through my writer friend Gina Wendkos, who had written another movie that I had directed of hers. That was at Sundance, called Ginger Ale Afternoon, and Gina one day showed me this project, and I was just so touched by it, and so it affected me so deeply because it relates to some of my family background. I'm half Jewish, but from my mother's side, so it spoke a lot to me. But also there was so much about compassion and forgiveness and themes that are so relevant, especially today. Probably more so today than ever, because the memory of the Holocaust is diminishing as time goes by, and we live in such a polarized time, such a polarized world, that it seems to be now more relevant than ever. So I'm finally so grateful that the film actually got delayed and got made now, because I feel it just means so much more. But the process was, for many years, we tried to cobble it together in various ways, with studio financing, independent financing. And we had a lot of very well-known actors attached. It went through almost every famous actor in Hollywood. And one by one, they died because we couldn't, so when Ed finally got it, he said, God, I hope, this is not gonna cause me to die. This is a dark joke. But eventually, life catches on with all of us. So, some of the actors that we had involved were, Martin Landau was the last one, and we spent many years trying to get it made with Martin, and unfortunately, he passed away a year before, we actually got the financing to make the film. But to make this story short, the film came together just through private financing in the end. It was just difficult to convince, anyone in Hollywood to actually make the film. Maybe it's because it's a dark subject matter. Holocaust films are not easy to get made. There have been a lot of Holocaust films, and and it's not like an obvious film, that has a huge built-in audience. So it was a difficult sell. So we put it together through private financing, private investors. Actually, a lot of it came through my own family. And, we took the risk to get the film made. We felt it was so important, to get this film made. And I think the miracle was when we found Ed Asner. And there was completely by accident. I was one day giving a lift to a neighbor friend of mine, and he mentioned that he is involved in a film with Ed Asner, that he has Ed Asner attached, to his film, which is a comedy about an older gentleman and a dog. But anyway, when I heard that, I told him, wow, I have this project that I think Ed would be amazing for. And I would be so honored if there was a way you could present it to him. So he said, as we're driving, this is like 1 minute after he got into the car, he picks up the phone and said, "Hey, Ed, I got a project for you. You want to speak to this guy?" And he put me on the speaker with Ed. And I just told him, this is a film that I think you would be wonderful for. And it's a Holocaust film. It's about what's going on in our world today, about the blindness of youth. He said, "I don't want to hear anything. Just send it to me. I want to read it. Bring it over tonight." So I drove all the way to his house, which is like 2 hours away. I dropped the envelope, and I, with my phone number outside his door, and there was that. Next day I got a call. He says, "Let's meet. We got to meet." So that evening we set up a dinner, with myself and Gina, the writer. And, it's a wonderful dinner, and we just got along, and, immediately I just felt Ed was the one. And what was so interesting is that Ed, is a comedic actor. He's very famous for comedy. But I just felt, that he had it in him to do a really serious dramatic role. And he turned out to be just wonderful. He completely, surprised us. How, as a dramatic actor, his range and his professionalism and the depth of his performance, and how dedicated he was at such an age. He would be every day on the set, 1 hour before. He was full of energy. He was very lucid, very intelligent. He has a brilliant mind. He remembers everything. It was just a miracle to be working with him. And the real test was with the actress, because I wanted to make sure that the chemistry would work. And she also came to me completely through an accident. We were in a casting. My son wants to be an actor. He was a teenager. So we went to a casting call at an advertising agency where they were looking for actors for a commercial. And we're sitting in the lobby with all these kids, and their mothers and guardians. And I look over and I see these intense eyes staring at me, these beautiful, deep, deep eyes. And I didn't even look at the face. It was the eyes. And then I saw, it's attached to this very beautiful, attractive, teenage girl. And I felt, this is so interesting. And we needed a poster, we needed a poster to raise financing. So I approached her mom and said, I'm putting this film together and I need to do like a poster so I can present this to the investors. Can we dress up your daughter as a punk, as a skinhead? Can we, take her out to Skid Row and take some shots? So the mom said, yes, wonderful. So, a couple of days later, we met with a photographer and we went to really rough areas of downtown Los Angeles. And I just started talking her through what she's supposed to be feeling. I said, you are homeless, you haven't been on the streets for days. You have no place to sleep. You're hungry. And she just melted into the role. I mean, you have no place to sleep. She lied down on the sidewalk, and the sidewalk was smelly and it was covered with urine. And she was completely homeless kid, And then I said, you should read the script. Would you like to read the script? So I gave her the script, and then we have a casting director. We got Ed, and we start casting. And the casting director sends all these, actors, Hollywood child actors. And they're really good, but a lot of them are kids who are 18 trying to pretend they're 14, And I told the casting director, can we just try this girl? We had her in a photo shoot. She's 14. She's the real thing, she's the real age. And he was really frustrated. He said, oh, come on, we're going to bring a newcomer, I don't want to waste my time, but I insisted. And she comes in and she does this amazing performance, this incredible performance, which just drove us to tears. And, I just whispered to Gina, who was sitting in the room with me, and I said, this is our Casey. She's the one. And it turned out that she has a very complicated childhood. And I think a lot of her performance was coming from her background, her family situation. And, at this time, I was not meant to reveal, but it turned out that she's also an adopted child. And, so everything that she was relating to in the script, troubled background, problems with her mom, a family that's broken, she felt it. She was the character. So the next thing was I need to present her to Ed. I can't make a decision until I see the two of them together. So I brought her to Ed's house, and they sat down together around the dinner table, and I said, let's just hear you guys read, and Ed was very skeptical, but she looked the role, and she was vulnerable, interesting, and she was scared, she's facing a very famous actor, a Hollywood legend. And she just started reading, and they started reading together, and it just like, they were the couple. But what really made the final decision, I told them, can you guys just walk together? And they walked together, and Ed was, frail, and she held his hand and she helped him walk. And that walk, there was just something so touching about the way they walked. That was Casey. That was Casey and Samuel. It was that walk where she was helping an elderly gentleman, frail, and it felt like, this is the dad that she never had, and it just moved us to tears. And that's when we realized, we have to have them perform. And so the next thing is that I did some improvs with her. I asked her to write a diary, to start sort of, writing her inner monologue, and then I did improvs with her where I pretended to be the principal in his school, and she's in detention, she's in trouble, and I reprimand her, and she's fighting back, and I got her to get that anger and that spunk, which is Casey, and she melted right into it, and she was perfect in the improvs. So that's how, the whole thing came together. But when we had to make the film, we had like absolutely no money. And the initial idea was to try to shoot the film literally in 10 days, but it did, that was impossible. And I think what was impossible that she was underage, she was 14. And then I very quickly realized that we got to follow all these laws, child labor laws, and this law, and studio teacher, and we can only work with her for 5 hours, and she has to take breaks. So we had to, organize the whole schedule in a very complicated way and shoot in a very fast, almost semi-documentary way. And I come from a documentary background. So very often we would be like racing the clock, and there was no time for rehearsals. There was no time even to change the camera angle. So we would just do a take, and then I would just whisper to the cameraman, don't cut, now let's move into a close and repeat the take. And then we would move around and repeat the take from this angle and that angle. So sometimes without cutting the camera, we got 6 or 7 shots in the last 5 or 10 minutes of the day when the studio teacher had to pull the plug on us. So we were like, we were constantly coming up with ways how to make this film. And we had to shoot, on real locations with very little security. And that was also very difficult. But here we got this girl in a leather jacket with a swastika, walking through downtown or right in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard, with all the tourists. And it created commotion. People got angry. They stopped her. Like, I was really terrified that, we might get beaten up. But we just filmed it and we just got away with it. But we took a lot of chances. I took a lot of chances. And at one time, the Screen Actors Guild came down on us. And they actually shut the production down for a week till we got our act together, got more security, and started, and they were very concerned about safety, especially for Ed. They were worried about Ed filming on public buses, on intersections, where we were sort of almost putting him in danger. But those are the risks, sometimes you have to take as an independent filmmaker, where you are trying to do something that you feel so strongly about, and your actors are in on the team. And, and Ed, who was the ex-president of the Screen Actors Guild, was such a, I mean, he was such a gentleman. He wrote a beautiful letter to the ladies. He said, please, we need to make this movie. Will you kindly allow us? And they rescinded, and he touched their hearts, and we were able to continue making the film. So anyway, I'm sorry it's such a long answer, but I'm telling you a little bit about some of the making of the movie. And and very often what we did is that we would start the day with filming scenes with Ed alone, then we would bring in Margot, and we would film very intensely, very quickly with her, and then she had to leave because her time was limited, the 5 hours, and then we would continue shooting with Ed, sometimes very late into the night. And well, he was amazing. He had such energy, and they were filming at midnight, and with a gentleman who is 80, in his late 80s, and believing so much in the movie. He felt this movie was very important for him to make because he saw it as a universal story. He saw, although we don't want to demean, the Holocaust, but he saw in this film how it resonates to what's going on in the world in a lot of countries and cultures, and how it relates to the whole world globally, and how the danger of something repeating itself like this can happen not only in the Jewish milieu, but also in other cultures, other milieus. So he felt it was a very important film to be made, and that it had a powerful message to the world.
Well, thank you. I think we all found that fascinating.
Yes, and what else can I say? I mean, but I think what's also beautiful about this film is that it shows unconditional love. That's what touched me, is that Ed, he's lived through such horrors, there's so much pain, but yet he's able to open up to this girl who is, so vile and so uneducated and so, ignorant of history of the world, like a lot of youth today, that here he was able to, as a character, as the Samuel, open his heart and teach her, and leave this gift for her before he dies. I think that's what we all find so touching in this story, and I hope you do as well.
Yes, Rafal, this is very interesting, but I do want to make sure that if there are questions here in the audience,
yes, absolutely.
And there are several on this side.
You alluded to the level of understanding of the Holocaust that today's youth have. What was her level of understanding or familiarity with the Holocaust?
Right. She actually didn't know a lot, believe it or not. She was very, very much the character. Although her stepdad had relatives who were Holocaust survivors. So as the film went along, she started learning and educating, and Ed, taught her a lot. And she started doing a lot of research. But what was wonderful is that she was, in a way, the real thing, the real character, a representative of, youth of America. And I think what's going on now is even worse. I mean, the latest statistics are showing that it's less and less knowledge, and I think Holocaust education is so important. And but only like about 1/3 of the youth now knows, I mean, they don't know that Hitler was elected democratically, even the 6 million. It's really, I mean, it's so sad that, because the youth is so much brought up on social media and not on history books, not in the classroom, but social media, which is such a fertile, ground for misinformation, for the truth being twisted and turned around, unfortunately. So what's going on in our culture is that young people are misguided, and it's really tragic because the world is getting so dangerous now, and there's so much anti-Semitism that's growing in this country and all over the world. It's really very disturbing. It's very sad and tragic and worrisome.
Next.
Hi, well, thank you for making this film. It was very touching and wonderful. I'm glad you guys stuck with it. My question was, I noticed, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought some of the names, the actual names of the actors for the skinheads, one or two of them were Jewish. Is that right? And how did that come about, and how did that work out for them?
Right. Well, we had to use a couple of them were stunt performers, because our the stunt lady brought a couple of associates that she works with, and they happen, to be Jewish, so they were playing those roles. It's just by necessity, we needed stunt actors because we had to work very quickly. But and there was a complicated scene, difficult scene to do, because at that time, when we were filming it, it just didn't. Some people said it's not believable that something like this can happen, and now 3 years later, it's happening more and more and more. The reality is just unfortunate.
Other questions or comments from the audience? Yes.
I was wondering what the background is on the story and the screenplay.
Yes. Well, the writer Gina, she's Jewish Italian. She was walking by a cemetery near Hollywood, a famous Jewish cemetery, and she kept on walking every day as she was working on a television show, and she saw the cemetery inspired her, and it turned out we filmed in that very cemetery where the inspiration came. And Gina is interested in female stories and troubled females and youth, and she saw she was from New York originally, in the East Village, and she would see homeless kids all the time. So somehow it came together, and I think that was the inspiration for the movie for her. And originally, she gave it to me, and I tried to make it happen. I tried to make it, and I failed, and it went to another producer director, and he failed. And then luckily Gina came back to me. So I guess it was destiny that I had to make the film.
Other questions?
But how many people are in the audience? I'm curious. So the film.
We had a good showing, and I think some people are headed home. We have a couple dozen, maybe.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, beautiful. That's wonderful. I spent some time in Spokane. I actually made a movie in Spokane.
You did?
Yes, a movie called Hangman's Curse, which is it's really strange, but it's written by a Christian writer. He's a Christian sort of best-selling author, and he had written a number of books that were very popular in the Christian community, and a production company that specializes in Christian themed films, they invited me to direct the film because it was about young people, teenagers, and I had done another movie called Fun that was at Sundance, which dealt with troubled youth. So I was attached to the film, and I shot in Spokane. So I spent like about 3 months in the city. it's a beautiful city and I love it. I mean, I love jogging. I would jog every day along the river, and had a really wonderful time. You know, there was a great crew, very dedicated, and really enjoyed being in Spokane.
Well, it's nice to be the site of productions that aren't just zombie television shows.
Right, yeah, that's right. Yes, yes.
You should tell them how many people were here when we were actually showing it.
Right, we had at least 50, maybe closer to 60 or even 70.
Uh-huh. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Oh, I'm so sad I wasn't there.
That's not maybe next time.
Yeah. Next
So I
time.
think Catherine has a question or comment.
Yes.
Firstly, thank you for making this, and thank you for all those private investors who persevered with you. It's an excellent film. You have mentioned a couple of times that you had filmed at Sundance. What sort of exposure is this film having? Is it at film festivals? Is it being picked up?
Right. Well, when we finished the film, we had several offers from distributors, and the distributor that was highly recommended is Missima Films. That's the distributor that has the film right now for the United States and Canada. And he specializes in Jewish-themed, Holocaust-themed films. So it felt like it was a natural home. And his strategy has been to play the film in all the Jewish film festivals across the United States and across the world. So he's played in it's almost 100 film festivals. And then he's also has been booking it to congregations. There's a lot of congregations that have booked the film. So that's the first step. It's his grassroots method of building word of mouth. And then the next step is, hopefully, if it works out the way he promised, that it's going to get a limited theatrical release in certain cities, followed by streaming, hopefully on HBO or Netflix, or he'll pitch it to all the companies using the film festivals, exposure and the reviews and all the press we got as a way to attract, hopefully, distributors so it can be seen widely across, North America. But I have the rights still for the international distribution. So I'm in the process of putting it out on iTunes and all the streaming services in all the English-speaking countries outside of United States and Canada. That means England, Australia, and then also we're subtitling it in all the languages. So it'll be available worldwide this spring. So, unfortunately, it's not easy to get these films to distributed, independent films. And we even tried an Academy Award campaign. We actually invested, money to do a campaign 2 years ago when the COVID, which I think was our best chance to actually get nominated. But we just didn't have enough funds to do it right. What I learned is, you can enter your film to the Academy Awards, but getting the Academy members, which is like 5,000 people to actually watch it, that's another story. They really follow the crowd. They basically watch the films that they're sort of being told by the curators. Well, these are the top films for the Academy Awards, so everyone goes and sees those. And and the billboards and the ads, the trade magazines and that's what drives the Academy members to watch usually a very small number of films. They don't watch, all the films that one hopes that they would watch and vote, based on what's really out there and not what they are being spoon-fed to vote on. But that's the way the system works. But the Academy Award campaign was really actually interesting because it allowed us to, we would email all the Academy members, and we got a lot of people in the industry aware of the film. So hopefully that'll help us in getting a wider distribution, which is the next step.
Okay, other questions? Down here.
I really like the artwork in the film, and particularly in the opening scene. I thought that was really powerful.
Yes, yeah, that's actually an interesting question. Thank you for asking that. The concept of her being an artist and the artwork actually happened in the second week of shooting. I noticed that one of the costume assistants, she was like a sort of punky type of artsy, interesting girl. I saw her sitting on the floor as we were shooting the scene. I saw that she had this diary, and there was these illustrations. I looked at one illustration, and it looked so interesting. It looked like a sort of like, a psychological self-portrait with like anger and writing and graffiti, and it almost expressed the inner life of our Casey character. So with her permission, I asked her, can I flip through your diary? And she allowed it. And it was quite amazing. It was like the diary of Casey. There were like about 100 self-portraits in all kinds of angry emotional states, with all kinds of writings and poetry. I said, we got to use your diary in the movie. This is Casey's diary. So luckily we hadn't shot anything in her bedroom or her parents' house. So when we made the decision, we asked whether we can use all her drawings pasted all over the walls of her bedroom. So that established the character that she's an artist and she draws. And then when it came to filming the zoo sequence, it saved us because we could not afford to shoot with a real tiger or even a digital tiger. It would be as expensive as the whole movie. And that allowed us to basically get the same dramatic effect of what the tiger scene was, the way it was written. Because the way it was written, she sits watching the tiger, and then she approaches the cage, and she's able to somehow get to a location where she can actually stick her hand into the tiger cell, and the tiger comes charging like he's gonna pounce on her hand and eat her hand, but she closes her eyes, and then she feels a tongue, and when she opens her eyes, the tiger is licking her hand. And it was just a very beautiful, very grand theatrical scene, grand theatrical gesture, which actually maybe didn't even fit to the realism of the movie. But we were able to get the same effect by doing the scene of her drawing the tiger. So I told this girl, I'm going to send you to the zoo 2 hours before we get there. I want you to do a portrait of the tiger and do drawings of the tiger. So she created those drawings 2 hours before, we arrived with the actress. And also we didn't have permission to shoot in the zoo. So what we did is we snuck just a small DSLR, a small camera, a still camera that can shoot bursts of fast, like for sports photography. So we shot the sequence like little bursts of sports photography of Casey drawing the tiger. And then we got that hypnotic effect, which actually I love, actually really works because it gives it almost like a dreamlike quality. So anyway, so after we did that, my wife, who is an artist, I said, now could you take this to the next level? Okay, let's incorporate more drawings throughout the movie, because these drawings in a way are like the inner soul of the character. They're like her subconscious stream of consciousness. So my wife did a whole series of drawings, and some of them we did on using an app on the iPad which memorizes your brush strokes. So we're able to play back those drawings as if they're being created in real time. And then we would sprinkle them in the movie in moments where we had to get in more inside the character. And it also helped us with the very last scene, because we have a drawing of a family. And in a way, it was like this beautiful conclusion to the story, because a lot of people were always asking, what happens to Casey after Samuel dies? And that drawing was the final conclusion, the uplifting conclusion, that her life has transformed.
Good. Oh, that's okay.
I think we
I'll
probably
get the
have
microphone
time for
over
one
there.
or two final comments, questions here.
This time I'm asking for a friend.
Yes.
They noticed that you had a stunt double for Casey, and we were wondering what scenes this double did for Casey.
Which? Oh, yes. It was the massage parlor. I completely, my mind went blank. Yeah, because, the Screen Actors Guild was very nervous about shooting this film with a 14-year-old actress, especially because this was the time when everything was blowing up. The whole Me Too movement was blowing up, and everyone was very sensitive how women are being treated on movie sets, especially for an actress and underage actors. So they were very, very specific. In fact, they almost did not allow us to make the movie because they were so concerned that what was going on in our culture at the time. So they gave us very strict rules. That we could not have, the actors could not have any physical contact with a male actor in that scene. That we had to use a double. So what we did is that we shot those scenes with her standing in front of a pillow. Basically, she performed all those scenes, in front of a bed with a pillow. And then we refilmed them with a double, with another, actress that from the back looked like Casey. So that we constructed that scene that way. So that was the scene where we used a double. The magic of cinema. Yeah.
Lots of magic. Other questions? If I may, I spotted a kind of irony.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel, of course, like Casey, is alone in the world at the beginning. And he's so alone even that when he goes to the synagogue, he goes to the sanctuary, he goes to pray because he's wearing a prayer shawl and he's using a prayer book. But really, that's not the way Jews pray. Jews pray and come together with other Jews.
Right.
But that's just an example of how alone he is. Yet this film, I think, was the #1 selection in our film festival. And our film festival is sponsored by Spokane Area Jewish Family Services, a social service organization, one of whose aims is to help people who are alone not be alone and connect with the community.
Right. Yeah. That's the irony. But there's something so beautiful about the solitude of him being alone. And it's almost like the solitude of Holocaust survivors. There's very few left now. So it's almost, to me, was symbolic, that like this, in a couple of years, there may be only one left that actually, was in a concentration camp. So that loneliness, is something I think very touching and symbolic to, the reality of what's unfortunately, the time passage and receding, and, in the script, that's his ritual. Every morning he goes to, pray for his wife every day, which is so beautiful. And then he goes and prays.
Yes. So I think I'm getting the signal that it's time to wrap things up. We want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm with us and for making something with so thank you again.
Thank you. I'm so grateful, to have the chance to have the film seen, especially on the screen, and I hope that one day soon it'll play in the theaters so everyone can see it. because I really believe that, you know, it appeals obviously to the Jewish community, but I feel it appeals to the whole world at large. In fact, it was interesting, I just wanted to mention, when it was shown in New York, the moderator was African American, and she said how much the film touched her and how much she related to it as an African American. That which is really interesting. I had never thought of that, and what she said was, to me, was very powerful.
Yes, I think you did a very good job making it of universal interest. There's a lot of Jewish content, but most of it you have to pay attention to catch.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we'll wrap this up for tonight. Thank you, and I hope you'll be in Spokane again and will come and visit us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.